This episode and season of the Links Golf Podcast is brought to you by Tourism Ireland. Visit ireland.com/golf today and start planning your dream golf trip to the Emerald Isle. That's ireland.com/golf. Today's conversation is with John Fote, who is currently a golf course architect, also had a great playing career as an amateur and a professional. We talked to John about what he's currently got in the works. He just finished the North Course at Windsong Farm in Minnesota, doing some work at Indian Wells in California, Moss Creek and Hilton Head Island, and more. So we got into all of that, his design philosophy, what he thinks makes a great golf course, and why. Also talked to John about his amateur career. He had a banner year in 1977, winning the U.S. Amateur at Aronimink and being a part of the winning Walker Cup team for the U.S. At Shinnecock Hills. Both of those venues, of course, are on the men's major championship schedule in 2026. So that was a fun parallel to talk to John about looking towards next year. And some other of his work, Sand Hollow Resort in Utah, one of those really well-known visual layouts that's on my bucket list, and a lot of people rave about that place. So we got into all of that. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Hope you enjoy our conversation with John Fote. Welcome back to the Links Golf Podcast. I am Al Lunsford, digital editor for Links, joined by Joe Passoff, my co-host, and John Fote joins us today, a neighbor of Joe's in Scottsdale, Arizona. John, decorated amateur professional player and now notable golf course architect with a lot of things in the fold going on right now for you, John. We'll get into a bunch of that, but thank you for joining us. How you doing today?
I am absolutely great. Happy to join you.
Appreciate you being with us. In 2026, we are seeing a lot of people pay attention to what courses come up on the calendar, particularly the major championships, and particularly the men. Usually, people are enraptured by, and on the calendar this year are two places that mean a lot to one John Fote, and a particular year in 1977 where he won a couple of very prestigious tournaments as an amateur. That year, the Walker Cup was contested at Shinnecock Hills, and the U.S. Amateur was at Aronimink. And in 2026, we have the U.S. Open at Shinnecock Hills and the PGA Championship at Aronimink. John, can you take us back to that year, why you were playing so well, and then we'll get into what you recall from each venue and how those things played out. But what all came together for you that year?
I had one of those years where I had learned from playing the year before, actually, and got really excited I really made it a goal, believe it or not, to try to win the U.S. Amateur and to be on the Walker Cup team. I mean, those are the peaks of amateur golf in the whole world. And for me, I had never been to Shinnecock before we got to the Walker Cup. The Walker Cup that year was contested the week before the U.S. Amateur, and I got chosen to play on the Walker Cup, and actually played all four matches. And we had a wonderful team. People didn't know a lot of the people on that team. People like Jay Siegel and them had not won a U.S. Amateur at that point, and had a lot of friends that were playing on that. It was just a blast. I just remember going to Shinnecock Hills, and I knew PJ Boatwright, who was executive director of the USGA at that time, and I went around the golf course. We played it, and I said, PJ, this would be a great site for the British Open. And he laughed. He said, "No, we're not going to. We're going to have the U.S. Open here." It had not been played there, and I said, "I just didn't realize what a wonderful venue that is. I mean, it is striking. I've been back a couple of times, and they've removed a lot of the tree cover that was actually there when we played the Walker Cup. But I just remember it was so much fun to play that event. I think of all the things I've done in golf, just being on a team with a bunch of guys pulling in the same direction was really, really fun. And of course, it's even more fun when you win. So we did win that year by quite a bit. we had a very, very solid team. Although the other side had a good one too, which included people like Sandy and Lyle. And but we had a great time. What people don't realize is those events, you make lifelong friends at those events. And I have since, seen Sandy over the years and different people that I played golf with on that. And it was just such a fun, it's you want to win so bad that you can't, you learn to control your emotions. And I think that was an event we all enjoyed. We were just delighted winning. I did not want to be part of a losing team. But that turned out to be one great week.
Well, you're
16 to
quick
8,
to
yeah, final score.
yeah, you're right. You're quick to credit your team and teammates and the team experience. How did you do in your four matches?
I won all my matches. Um, I won both single events, and I was paired with an old friend of mine, Vance Hefner, and we played like the number one doubles team. We were good friends. We sort of understood each other's game, so it was easy for us to figure out which holes to drive and which not to, and so which we're going to play the iron shots. And so we ended up, and I'll tell you, we were very driven, and we played Sandy Lyle and his partner in one of the matches, and we played very, very well that day. We ended up winning like 4-3.
Pretty nice.
Yeah, kind of
As
flip
I
that.
as I cannot imagine.
The flip
Yeah.
side of that, this was Walker Cup before the U.S. Amateur that year. This year it seemed like they were very close together. I mean, you had the U.S. Amateur at Olympic Club, and then the Walker Cup at Cypress. Um, you went in to the U.S. Amateur obviously on a tear. There's a great article, and it's from 2012. I found on the USGA website as I was, um, looking up your history in those events, and it talks about how you had won 22 straight match play matches, and going in, you went 4-0 at the Walker Cup, and there was some beautiful symmetry also in your match going into the quarterfinals where you were playing against Jay Siegel and get a mud ball, which had been something that maybe derailed you the year before. Can you tell us what happened there?
Well, in 1976, the U.S. Amateur was played at Bel Air Country Club in Los Angeles, and I was 2 up with 3 to play, and I lost the last 3 holes. So you can imagine how I felt after that happened. But the mud ball is interesting because I got to the 18th hole that year, and I my ball had mud all over it, and of course there's no relief for mud on your ball.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I managed to kind of think about too much about the mud ball, and I just let it squirrel off to the right and end up losing the match, which that was so frustrating. The funny thing was when I was playing Jay Siegel, we came to the 18th hole. I was 1 up, and I walked up to my ball along with all the USGA guys, and we're looking at the ball, same thing, covered with mud. And I just sat there and I thought to myself, I said, I'm not going to do what I did last year. I'm just going to go ahead and swing it and try to hit the best possible shot I could. And I actually, for whatever reason, I hit it in about 3 feet, just over a bunker, which Harry Easterly, who was president at the time, looked at me and he says, we'll never change the rule after watching you hit that shot. And I said, I can tell you about last year if you want me to, but anyway, it just ended up being, something you always remember. And Jay hit it in the front bunker at that point. This was his home golf course, by the way. That was one of the hardest matches I ever played. It was like 6 people deep around every hole. I mean, it was like playing, it was like playing a Goliath, because Jay was the man at that time at his
Yeah.
own club. And he would go on to, as you know, win many tournaments as an amateur. And he hit it in the bunker, blasted it out, and obviously he was going to lose because he had a putt for par and I was 3 feet for birdie. He walked over and picked up my coin and said, "That was such an amazing shot. You deserve to win." And the whole gallery just thought there was some miracle going to happen, and they all groaned, and he said, "No, you deserve this." I mean, that was an amazing shot. Now, it's one of those things you never forget.
Yeah.
That's a nice tip at the cap from one of the best amateurs in USGA history.
Absolutely. And I saw Jay many times over the years, and we chit-chatted about that and a few other up and down recoveries I made during the round, and enjoyed seeing him at Walker Cup reunions. He was an interesting guy, very interesting. The last time I saw him actually was a couple of years ago. They had a Walker Cup reunion in New York at one of the golf clubs there across the street from Wingfoot and at Quaker Ridge, and we had a great time just talking. And it's hard to believe he's not with us anymore, quite frankly. He was always very serious about golf, and but a great competitor and a gentleman, and I always enjoyed my time with him. Especially enjoyed being able to beat him that day. That, believe me, that was no small task. I
Uh,
happened to be playing extremely well at that time, and yeah, it was an amazing thing.
Who's in charge of putting together the Walker Cup reunions? Is that around the tournament, or you guys just once a year get together? What's the
No, the
case?
USGA does it.
Okay.
Yeah, the USGA has events where they bring in people that have played in the Walker Cup, or I attended a reunion one time in Newport that was for U.S. amateur champions. And so they do that periodically. They're very much into the history, which is really cool. They
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah.
So, I've attended a number of those things, and it's been really, really fun.
To be a fly on the wall at one of those, Joe. It's
and get swatted.
almost like, yeah, like sort of like the Masters Champions Dinner, this sort of elite thing that only so few can are privy to. Very cool. You went on to play professionally. You were the PGA Tour Rookie of the Year in 1979. Career kind of cut short, though, with some injuries, which led to your second career in golf course design. Can you sort of take us through that transition from you're a professional and unfortunately you got to hang it up, but you found something else that was a passion?
Well, it's interesting because that was really a tough time for me when I realized my spine was not really working as well as it should. And remember, guys, back in those days, there wasn't a lot of money on the PGA Tour. I think I finished 30th on the money list in 79. I think I made a little over 100 grand. So compare that today with probably $4 or $5 million. I don't begrudge that at all. I'm fortunate to have had and seen and been the places that I did. I always tell people, I said, there's two things I tell people. One, it's better to have been a has-been than a never was, when they start giving you a few cheap shots about this or that. But for me, I think playing really prepared me for being able to be a golf course architect, because I've always been analytical. I studied accounting, have a degree in accounting. My dad wanted me to be a doctor. He took me up to, he did the wrong thing. He took me up to this lab that had cadavers laying around it. And I looked at him, I said, there is no chance of me ever doing this. I was a good student. And I said, there's no chance. Any father wants his son to succeed. I said, I'm going to be in golf. And he's like, that is such a hard road. And he was glad I did that, but that was such an interesting time for me in 84, 85, when I had won a couple times on tour, but I wasn't achieving all the success I wanted to. I felt like I needed a little more time, but it was really weird. I was playing Memphis, and I all of a sudden my neck got so stiff I couldn't even see my feet, and it scared me to death. And then they kind of misdiagnosed it, and it didn't realize that it was bone spurs and stuff in there. They just said, "Oh, you just have a muscle that's tired." And I kept trying to play, and it just made it worse. So for me, all of the experiences I had, playing in 3 Masters, playing collegiate golf, we went to Europe, all the different things that I got to experience, and not as much as someone like a Jack Nicklaus or a Tom Weiskopf, but I had a lot of experiences playing great golf courses. Having grown up in Portland, Oregon, there really wasn't the kind of golf courses that's an Aronimink, for example. And so when I got out and got a chance to play Donald Ross golf courses and see some of the great venues in golf, it just made me realize how much I loved golf and had a super passion for it. And the instigator of me wanting to be a golf architect, I never thought about being a golf architect, but I wanted to bring the US Open to Portland, Oregon. And I remember calling PJ Boatwright when we were building Pumpkin Ridge. And I said, man, you got to come and see this. We need a venue for that. And he said, oh, you guys don't have the golf courses and this and that. I said, but the Northwest deserves to have some kind of a US Open. And he says, well, if it's as good as you say it is, we'll take a look at it, and we left it there. But I just gained such a passion for design. I still, after all these years, still have it. I just love being on site and the process of building and designing a golf course, which, by the way, not all aspects are fun. Some of it's hard. But if you keep in mind, the idea that you're creating something and it's a responsibility that you have basically to build the best possible golf course on any piece of land you can, it's so much fun for me. I love it. I don't have many hobbies. I have a 700 book collection in there that I like to study occasionally and look at old Donald Ross plans to get the inspiration. I don't really copy holes, but I love the concept of some of the great holes. And Joe, you were with me in up at Windsong Farm North, and so you kind of saw I did some replica holes, which I've been, a lot of the holes that I've played are inspired from my play at Aronimink and the greens, the way they were designed and the way the bunkers played and things. So I just got so into that and so interested in that, when I sort of took up with Bob Cupp, he's like, man, you're really into this. And Nicholas is the one who introduced me to Bob. And so I really credit both of those guys for helping me get into this business. And as time has gone on, I still love it just as much as I did the first day I got involved. And if you don't have any passion for what you do, if you're just going to work every day, when you're doing golf architecture, I think it'll show up in the end product. That's just my opinion.
Well, John, in many ways, you were fortunate to be able to extend. You didn't hang the shingle, but you shared one, so to speak, with Bob Cupp, really one of the unsung legends of golf course design. So many projects, so much knowledge, an amazing career that he had. How did you get involved with Bob? You mentioned Jack Nicklaus, and then what did you do with Bob? What did you learn from Bob that you were able to take as you went on in the years?
Well, it was funny. You should ask that. I happened to be playing in a tournament at the old Inverary Classic down in Florida.
At Jackie Gleason.
Yeah, and I was paired with Nicholas. And, we started chatting about design and stuff. And he just kind of stepped back and looked at me. He said, this is more than just something for you to think about. I mean, I would suggest you talk to my senior designer, Bob Cupp. And at that time, and so what I did was I called Bob and bugged the hell out of him, until and Bob wasn't looking for an assistant or anything. He said, if you can find a project that we can work on, I'm happy to bring you along and we'll see what we can do. And it just so happened in my old hometown of Portland, Oregon, Pumpkin Ridge was that project. And Bob was really my entree. He really taught me because, guys, I really think with golf architecture, you need to be able to first be able to understand how to build a golf course, what the slopes are supposed to be, how drainage works and all that stuff, how to develop a set of plans. For me, I learned all of those things from Bob. And then, of course, just going out in the field and working on it. And so for me, it was Pumpkin Ridge was a great incubator for me because the reality is I lived there. I could go out there every single day. And I worked with the construction people every day. Bob would come every week or two and we would review what was going on. And, just started at the beginning. And I could draw a little bit. My mom was very artistic. And so I had a little bit of that in me. I would draw plans. And at that time, we weren't doing it on the computer. We were hand drawing plans. I still have those plans here in my office, actually. On the old Mylars, which anybody that's been in this business for a while would realize, wow, using sticky backs and things. But I learned not trial and error, but some of it was just osmosis. Bob wasn't there to teach me. I was just there to learn. And it's kind of like going from a 30 handicap down to about a 3. It's really easy actually to get to be from a 30 handicap down to maybe a 10 or something. To get beyond that, it takes a little bit of really hard work and skill. And I was willing to put in the hours. And I had some time because my neck was all screwed up. So as time went on, it became very apparent to me that I could do it. And so I started, we had several projects we did together for a number of years. And I learned so much from him and the other guys who were in his organization. I would have to credit them 100% with me being able to learn how to do it, you know.
So I want to touch a little bit more, Al. I know we got a lot to cover, but Pumpkin Ridge in particular was one of the it courses. It's a 36-hole complex of the 1990s. And I don't know whether you guys started on that in the late 80s or the early 90s, but that was kind of the one. Well, of course, it was the private part of that, Witch Hollow, where Tiger won maybe the most famous U.S. amateur win since John Fote won at Aronimink.
I don't know about that.
But the U.S. Women's Open came in short order, and there was a lot of excitement building on the prospect of getting a U.S. Open to Pumpkin Ridge, and then a couple of years went by, and Bandon appeared, and some other things, and it was almost like the whispers I heard was that because of Titleist's new golf ball and how the game had changed so quickly that Pumpkin Ridge just wasn't long enough for the new breed of player. What is your takeaway now as to what Pumpkin Ridge was and how you feel about it these days?
You're exactly right, Joe. I mean, I remember developing the scorecard for the Witch Hollow, and it was a little over 7,000 yards. And at that time, that was adequate. But the golf ball changed my last year on the PGA Tour. I just remember Titleist came out with this golf ball that had random dimples, and it just immediately went 15 yards further. Just immediately, I can tell you as a tour player. And then it's just jetted up from there. And Pumpkin Ridge today isn't long enough for a U.S. Open. It's had 2 women's opens, but it just isn't quite enough of a test. And I'm not sure you could lengthen it enough. You have 2 golf courses there. You could probably combine the 2 and make something long enough to do that. I think you can. But for me, it was such a great place to learn. And that for me, that's what it is. The golf ball from when I played on tour to where it goes now, it's got to be 20 to 25% further. Instead of guys really crushing it and it goes 290 to 300, it goes 330 to 340 now. You're seeing guys hit the ball so far that, it's just amazing. I remember there's a golf course I did down here in Marana called the Gallery, and they had a big tournament there. Tiger won one year, and I remember the press conference. He said, we lengthened a couple of the par 5s on that golf course to 600 plus yards. 17 we lengthened it to about 6:0, 6:10 uphill. And I remember Tiger walking in the press thing and says, I love the golf course because I like to have reachable par 5s that are reasonable. He hit a driver to 2-iron into 17. It's 6:10. I'm like, oh my gosh. Pumpkin Ridge was the same way, guys. I remember him playing on the 9th hole there, which I built a center bunker. It's kind of a split fairway. And it was, it was 310, 315 yards over the bunker. He just gets there with the driver, just blows it right over that thing and hits a sandwich in. And I just looked at the guys. I said, what in the heck are we going to do now? I said, do we need to lengthen every golf course by 1,000 yards or something? Because, wow, it opened my eyes quickly to how far, guys were hitting the ball. I just wasn't accustomed to that. So, yes, we're building golf courses much longer now, and you have to. Otherwise, there aren't any par 5s.
It's funny. I was talking to someone who worked with Pete Dye at crooked stick around the time that they had the event where John Daly was hitting it past all of his features. And it's sort of
Right.
like the same exact thought, like, okay, like my golf course now is obsolete when you've got a guy doing that. So it's interesting how history repeats itself in that way.
It yeah. I mean, the ball, golf courses today, guys, if you've ever been to Pinehurst and been in the locker room there, there's a letter in the men's locker room when Donald Ross came back from 1936 to, it was his greeting to the members. We have made the greens all grass. We're going to have the PGA this year. We've got a championship course. It was 6,900 yards plus in 1936. In today's world, that would be equivalent to about 8,300 yards, because that's how much further the golf ball goes today,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, it's just out of control. I hope they can get a grip.
Yeah. I like how you talked about Pumpkin Ridge as like the incubator for your design career. Uh, at what point did you feel where you were like the 10 handicap designer? When did you get to a scratch, and what project did you feel like, all right, I've got this figured out, and I'm good at this. Like I'm a scratch level architect, if you will.
I'm still working on it, but quite frankly, um, I just think the golf course I build now are so much better than they were then, even. But I was so excited because Pumpkin Ridge finished like, it was in both categories that year in Golf Digest, guys. It won for best private and runner up for best public, which was unheard of at that time. And I think it was so satisfying to me that I figured, you know what? Maybe I can do this. This isn't just, maybe this is something I can stay in the game of golf. I love it so much. I'm not a person who would be good at being a teacher. There's a lot of people that are great instructors. That's really not my bag. I just like complex, complicated problems and issues with routing golf courses and stuff. I quickly found myself really engulfed in that. I love it. I like to see what other people, not only great old designers, but I love going to and seeing sometimes what some of the other guys are doing as well. And for me, it's all just part of the process. It's an experience, learning how to do those things. Joe, I couldn't have built the North Course at Windsong, which just opened. I couldn't have built that 25 years ago. Today, I just feel like I'm so much more tuned in to what some of those great old designers did and why. Bob Cupp said it best when he said to me, he says, John, he says, here's what I want you to do. Tell me a couple of holes that you like, and don't tell me it's because you made eagle there or birdie or something. Tell me why you like it. And that inspired me to start thinking in terms of bunker placement, different parts, why we would remove this tree or keep that one, or the slope on the green and how important that was, the size and the scale of shots. I think to be a good designer, you really have to understand golf. I mean, just, you can't be on the outside looking in. You have to have some experience in the game of golf. And for me, I've always remembered that with Bob, and I remembered he asking me that, and I had to answer, like, why do you like 13 at Augusta National? Don't tell me you made eagle there and that's why you like it so much. Forget about your golf game. What makes that a great hole in your mind? And so for me, I've always kept that in the back of my mind. Why do I like this? Why is this hole going to be good? What do we need for a green size here? What's the scale? What's the slope? What are we trying to do? And for me, that is the best part of design, is figuring out a complex problem like that. And sometimes you have obstacles in your way, whether it be a wetland or whether it be something else. You have a small piece of land. What are you going to do with it? Windsong North is 125 acres. Windsong South is 220 acres. So obviously, when you start doing a golf course like that, you have to really, really think about what you're doing on every hole and use everything you can possibly find out there.
Joe, what do you see at Windsong? And now that he's brought that up a couple of times, I know you
Yeah,
got
I
the
know.
chance
I
to view that.
feel like I want to jump back a little bit eventually with some really cool stuff that John has done over the years. But we do seem to be the breeze is blowing and Windsong is in the air. And what we're referring to is a private club, what just west of Minneapolis, St. Paul,
Yeah.
and for gee whiz, 20 maybe 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. You did the first course at Windsong Farm, and it's acclaimed, shall we say. Golf Digest has it ranked in the top 10 in the state of Minnesota. It has jumped into various top 100 or top 200s. Maybe not as much notoriety because it is private, but everybody seemed to love it. Anybody that, including me, that got a look at it, like, oh yeah, you could put a big tournament here tomorrow for all of its attributes. But it's big, bold golf, spacious, challenging in every way. And then what happened when the club said, "We got this other parcel. We think we want to do more golf." But it was nowhere near as big and as spacious as the first course at Windsong. What did you recognize there? What did you suggest? And what did you do there with a course that became Windsong North?
Joe, that's a great question. When I looked at the property, I thought the property had a lot of potential. You just didn't have a lot of property. But if you go back, and I've played some of those great old golf courses, and you think about them, whether it be a Marion or some of the golf courses on Long Island, some of those, they're on about like 110 acres or something. I said, to me, I just went to the owner and I said, to what we need to build here is something that is unique but is a throwback to maybe the 1910 era, almost before some of the golden age of golf architecture, which was really more like the 20s and 30s. This would be, more like, and we went down and visited like Shore Acres. And I just told everyone, I said, what we need to do here is do some golf holes that really aren't reliant on length, because we're never going to get the kind of length out of that property that you can get on the South Golf Course. You're never going to. And of course, the next thing is, and I work at a couple of clubs that have lesser second courses. I don't want to be the bastard stepchild trying to recreate the South. I wanted something completely different that would pay homage to some of the great old golf courses. Hence, that's why you see my version of some of the replica holes, which I have loved throughout the time that I've played in different places around the world. And so as we started fitting the routing together, it kind of came together. I brought some of those things into the process. So when I was thinking about it, I knew I wasn't going to be able to build something long. So what did I want to do? I wanted to build something it had memorable holes, that would be conducive to it's funny, Joe. I'm told by the owner that even the really good players like they have at Windsong that can hit the ball 300 plus, they like to go over to the North Golf Course as much, if not more, than they do the South Golf Course, which that's when I felt like we'd really achieved what we wanted to, because John, you've got to build a golf course here that you can get them to play half of the time. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So we really put our thinking cap on for at least a year on how to do that. We took some trips and got everybody tuned into what we were going to do. And it was just inspirational, really. I found parts of the property where you could build, a so-called dell, or the same concept as an Eden Green. That's what you have to do. You have to manage the resources you have in golf architecture. That doesn't mean you bulldoze away features. You need to embrace them. And that's kind of what we were trying to do. We really didn't move much dirt there. We built greens and tees and features, but we didn't really have to move dirt from this place to that place on a grading basis. So that was the part that was fun for me, just being able to take something from, that we'd looked at that property for a number of years. And when Dave Meyer called me and said, "Hey, let's do something on this," I really got fired up.
So, I mean, again, what a compliment to have good players, and there are a lot of good players at Windsong Farm, to be able to say we're really having as much fun on this golf course that's 1,000 yards shorter or so. Why is that? What challenges did you present to them just in a smaller package? Besides, and I wouldn't even necessarily call them replicas, they were homages. They weren't down to the bare, just the
Exactly.
concepts which are tried and true. So, how do those good players have that much fun on a significantly shorter golf course?
Well, it's so funny. One of the members there that I know came up to me and he said, "Well, you're just building a women's course over there." I said, "Dude, I'm just going to play from the back tees on every hole." Okay, you're going to play the last hole 490 from the back tees? Well, maybe not that hole, and I just wanted to prove to people once and for all that it's not just length that makes golf courses great. It really is. That's just the way it is. And I know from experience, when I would go to San Francisco and you could play Olympic Club or San Francisco Golf Club are two examples there. Olympic Club is big, huge. It's Windsong South. It's big, it's long, it's an incredible test, but it'll beat you up if you're not careful. Whereas you go to San Francisco Golf Club, it's just a blast to play that. It's nowhere near as long and big, and I just felt like that's what we needed to achieve on that property. And I mixed in some of those holes that are similar. The actual Redan doesn't really look like the Redan I built. It's the same concept, and I think I like my Redan better than the original. That's me personally. I've been to North Barrick a number of times, and I think the one we built there is even better. But they were just inspired. I found places on the property where it's like, the ninth hole really works like Riviera, number 10. I think we can make this work here. So imagining those things was what was fun. And every hole has kind of a story and inspiration behind it. And I'm just giving you a couple of examples. That's all. I knew some of these holes, and I didn't build any replicas, but you build golf that suits that piece of property. And I found a spot, for example, where I thought that the Barritz would work, and the fourth hole there. And I mean, it's really fun. I've never built a golf course. You don't even play the same par until you get to the 15th hole. I mean, think
Hmm.
about that. It just goes 4, 3, 5, 3, 5, 4, 5. I mean, it's really fun. The variety on the North Course, I think, is one of the things people love. But it doesn't have, it's not, golf isn't determined just by how long it is. And a lot of people think, oh, it has to be 7,500 yards to even be any good. I don't really think that.
Well, uh, again, ringing endorsement for Winsong North, certainly here. Winsong Farms, the official name. Um, I think what left a lasting impression on me, and we'll move on to some other awesome projects, past and present. But that when you think about a golf course that's about 6,500 yards, par 70, on 125 acres, your brain goes, oh, yeah, it's got to be kind of cramped and restrictive. I did not get that feeling at all. And I think that's the lasting impression is that you can swing away, but you better swing away with some intelligence and some thinking about it, because you do have room to play, even though it's only on 125 acres. It's just the way you sequence the holes, the way they're routed, and there's some shorter par fours that you're still going to have a blast with. They just happen to have a few extra shorter par fours. So then, boom, you got that 18th hole, which is Cape style, all the golf you could possibly handle, and you have enough examples of that. I think that's a great lesson moving forward for any developer, let alone an architect, who says, well, yeah, we can take a smaller piece of property and still do wonderful imaginative things with it. Where today's game, where my new driver for Christmas and I want to blast away, you can still do that on this smaller parcel, but you better be judicious, when it comes time to letting it out.
I can't tell you how happy I am to hear you say that, Joe, because that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to teach people that it's not just length that makes a golf course great. It's forcing someone to actually think their way around. And for me, I mean, I think you need to build golf courses that are thoughtful and interesting and make somebody think, gee, do I want to try to hit a driver on this hole, or should I lay back, or I've got to position my shot in a certain place on the green or I'm going to be in trouble. So for me, that's why I say I put so much passion into that project, because it was a collection of things in my mind. And not, I mean, there's other holes that didn't fit on that property, obviously, that I've played and loved. But I think that golf course got more of that out of me than just about any project I've ever built, quite frankly. It wasn't just routing on this big piece of property. Okay, John, you've only got a very small piece of property, and everybody tells you you're not going to build a good golf course over there. And I love that challenge, quite frankly. I love being able to build something that everybody would want to play.
Looked like you were up to it. Al, I know you want to ask John about a course in Utah that overwhelms with scenery
How
and
did you know
is
that? How
number
did you know that? That was what I was thinking.
is number one ranked. I know we've talked about this in the past. A wish list, bucket list course kind of for you.
Yeah.
So I'll turn it over to you for this one.
Yeah. How do you go and find the golf holes at Sand Hollow? I mean, that's one of the most visual courses in the entire world, as far as I'm concerned, and what my eyes have seen. Like, you talk about finding what works on a small piece of property. Uh, how do you do it at Sand Hollow and get the result there?
You know, Sand Hollow is like playing golf in a national park.
Mm.
It's like being at Zion's or something. And when you look at that property and you go, oh my gosh, and we moved almost no dirt there. We didn't bring anything in. We built everything out of the native sand. When you look at a piece of property like that, that's overwhelmingly spectacular, especially the holes on the cliffs, you really get this thing in your mind. How can I maximize what's there? How can I take this piece of property that has obviously got all the right ingredients to be really, really good? How do and it's really incumbent upon the designer to not screw it up, to build stupid holes that don't fit together and those types of things. So the routing study is very integral into what you're doing. I mean, how do I maximize the cliff holes? What is the best that you can do there? And so for me, that's the resources. It's all sand, it's red sand. People ask me, why didn't you do white bunkers? Because I said they'd only be white for a month because the sand blows around and it would go in there. And I said, whether you like that sand or not, that's what you got, and it's perfect sand for building greens, by the way. So for me, finding the golf holes there in any location was the critical thing. Staking it, walking it, looking at different natural features, and there are some spectacular ones there, that you need to manage that very carefully, and you need to be thoughtful. You need to spend time on the site. You need to walk it. You need to look at it. You need to figure out, okay, and I wasn't trying to build any replica holes. I was just trying to get the holes in the right place to maximize view, length, and then fit together like a piece of music. And that's really what Sand Hollow, I was just there last week and went out and saw the guys. And I'll tell you what, it's a stunning piece of land. And it has, besides just being stunningly beautiful, it has natural sand there that works very, very well. Happens to be red, reddish orange. So that's what you got. But to do that on that golf course was really, really fun. And I think, as you know, Joe, there's 3 nines there. We built the other 9 that is kind of a St. Andrews links course. It has some holes from some of those great holes at St. Andrews, like the road hole and stuff. People might not recognize it when they first see it, but it definitely does. So it's fun.
Yeah, I mean that's
Well,
bucket list for me for sure.
yeah. There you go. It's just John, in your career, like a lot of the great architects throughout history, you've worked in so many different environments. I mean, certainly, at least in the US, so many different states where you get the Pacific Northwest and, pretty deep in the trees, and then you get a landscape that you had in Utah, it's almost indescribable, except I think you just did a good job of doing that. Um, and then, there's the kind of golf course, I'll segue into this, where it originally was built from scratch with just about nothing. And that is out in the Palm Springs area, the Indian Wells Golf Resort. It was basically originally flat desert. And another architect, Ted Robinson, had designed a couple of very serviceable, enjoyable resort courses back in the 80s. And then ownership, meaning the city of Indian Wells and management, said, gosh, we need to change some things. We need to do some things. And basically, both courses there were reimagined. Yours was the second effort, and it was known as the Players Course. Uh, I
Yes.
think my guess is because it was a little stronger uh, test, deeper bunkers, a little more rustic, and that sort of thing. And you were recently asked and just in completed um, to do a renovation of your own work because there were some changes to the property. So explain what's that's like working on a site that doesn't have a lot of natural attributes and what you do, and then what you've done with Indian Wells Golf Resort, the Players Course, which is a really, really popular offering. All the facilities there and both courses get a lot of love, but yours gets a little bit more love.
Joe, it's really interesting. And people ask me about that all the time. I stayed involved with that project when I was first asked to do that project. Of course, Clive Clark did the other golf course, and he and I became famously great friends through this process. But I was asked to build that what became the Players Course, but I had to keep 17 and 18, which there's a wash in between. When it gets flooded, you can't even really play the course. I had to build these two holes in the middle, in between these hotels, or around a hotel there, which I'm just going to be honest with you, I just hated that. And I kept trying to get them to let me exclude those. They wouldn't. And so you have to keep those, John. That's the one requirement you have. You can build whatever you want on this side of the wash, on the north side of the wash, but you have to keep those two holes, which I just gritted my teeth because I like, Joe, I like greens and tees close together. And those two holes are just like off by themselves somewhere. They're good holes. They're not connected to any part of the golf course. And so when we just being, I remember the city manager asking me, what would you do if you could they sold the property for those two holes. What would you do if we had to, and I'm like, you're just singing my song. I just so want to be involved in this because that's the course I wanted to build a long time ago. So
Mm.
I was fortunate. I took the two holes and we got rid of those. They sold them. There's going to be another resort built on that side. Joe, going from the old 16th to the 17th went down through a big wash. And there are days when you couldn't get over there. They had to try to start on 17, then play 18 and finish way out on the golf course. And it was just, it never worked. It never worked. Even though I know I think it was a good golf course. People liked it, but it just wasn't, it was ranked highly, all that kind of stuff. But in the back of my mind, I thought, this could be so much better if you didn't have those holes over there. And when they
Right.
came to me and said, we're going to sell the land, I'm like, thank you. This is so good. I had to redo 7 holes there you can't just take 2 holes and throw them in the middle of a golf course and say, okay, there they are. And out of this, I took holes from the front and the back 9 and combined it into returning 9s now, which I think is better on a resort golf course.
Mm.
Not that, believe me, I built a lot of golf courses that are continuous. You don't come back to the clubhouse. I like those too. The land may dictate that. But in this particular case, I kept 11 of the holes. Now, we did refurbish them. We redid the greens, took the thatch layer out. We wanted everything to be the same. Basically, the golf course is new, just I had some holes I kept. We redid some of the bunkering, expanded the tees back to where the size they were originally at. They had 500,000-600,000 rounds there, Joe, since I worked on it. And you know what happens to a golf course when you beat it to death like that? It becomes tired. But for me, being able to, and as you will see, I think you're going to the opening to see how the 18th hole now finishes right there where I reversed the first hole and made it 18. And it plays right there, and it's right back into the mountains, and it's right there by the clubhouse, and everybody is like, wow, this is so great. I said, this has been such a fun project to do, because I was able to actually sort of put some pieces back together, take holes from each 9, and make it so that it did all the things that I was hoping it would do many, many years ago when we did the golf course. So for me, it was like a dream come true to be able to work on that, quite frankly.
Al, it sounds to me like the second bite of the apple at Indian Wells Golf Resort is a really sweet one, and I'm excited to go see it and report back on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Now I'm jealous that you get to go do that. I just had to listen to all that and just be like, all right, well, Joe gets to see this. Good for him.
so yeah, and I think just John, speaking for Al, what else is going on for John Fote in 2026?
Well, the interesting thing was this year was probably the busiest year of my life. I worked in Hilton Head, which you can think of the climates you've worked in. I worked in Hilton Head. I worked up in Utah in the mountains, 2 different projects there, 2 in the Palm Springs area. And so when you think about that, that's really amazing. A couple of those are only half done, so we've still got another year to go. But there's more work to come in places like Utah and California.
All right, before you jump into that, I got to take 2 minutes with you because you mentioned Hilton Head, and one of the true old-time classics on Hilton Head you're working on an old Fazio golf course, uh, Moss Creek. And what are you doing there? Because Al and I both
Mhm.
are very familiar with Hilton Head, having worked for Links Magazine
Yeah.
over the years. And obviously, there's Harbor Town and Sea Pines and other courses that kickstarted Hilton Head. But with private development, Moss Creek was one of the real pioneers in the area.
It really is. Joe, my wife and I talk about it all the time. We loved Hilton Head. The Carolinas are a very special place. I mean, they truly are a very, very special place. I love the tree. I love those beautiful old oak trees that they have, the live oaks, and then they've got the longleaf pines. And I'm not a big tree guy, but there you're just in awe of how beautiful the trees are in that part of the world. What I did was it is actually one of Tom Fazio's first projects. And they asked me to come in and redo the green surfaces and stuff. And I said, well, you can't redo the greens unless you do the bunkers surrounding them too. So they were nice enough to allow me to do that. I took out some trees that had become a bit overgrown. The greens, Joe, averaged on that golf course, because they had shrunk, just maybe 4,000 square feet. I had one green that was literally under 2,000 square feet. I'm like, what in the heck is this? I analyzed it and proposed this to the committee, and they're like, yeah, we know. We need you to fix it. And so I've increased the size of all the greens by about 35% or more. And I moved 2 of the greens for more for sunlight and other things to not have to chop down all the trees and everything. So we worked again with what we have there. Hilton Head is great. Moss Creek is great because it's all sand. And so for me, that was helpful. So I just built 18 new greens and the green surrounds. And I can tell you that, I mean, the members' reaction has been really good. You never really know till you open it. You know what I mean? You never really know, but I feel really good. It's been completely reimagined in so many different ways. So I think Tom Fazio would like what we did there. We increased the green sizes back. We added some movement in the greens, and we did some things that I think make that golf course a lot better. I mean, it's really fun. But I worked in Hilton Head this year. I mean, the different places I went, all different environments. You know, the desert. Hilton Head is obviously completely different. You know, humid, area where you get rainfall all the time. The desert, you get none. And did two projects in the Palm Springs hill, area. And so for me, but Moss Creek was really fun. I worked with my old friend Tim Morgan, who was a past agronomist on all those USGA events, and he and I stayed with him. We talked about it for hours, and it was fun having somebody who really gets it and understands golf like he does, and all the different things. And he would feed me information, and I would input that into the design process. And for me, that was great. I mean, it really, really was great.
Little collaboration over dinner. Yeah, that sounds very effective.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you, when you stop learning is about the time you die, because you really need to take every project is different, comes with a different set of circumstances, whether it be weather patterns, whether it be the soil, the tree cover. And Hilton Head has, and Moss Creek, the North Golf Course there, has some of the most beautiful tree cover I think I've ever seen. But like with any golf course, you can get too much of a good thing. And on that
Yeah.
particular golf course, they had way too many trees. They had grains under the drip line, and they were suffering because of that. So we fortunately, we didn't have to take out any of the live oaks, but we did take out some of the pines and some of the other trees that were there. And I think by opening it up, it just made the golf. I mean, the members are just like, oh my gosh, we didn't realize we had this here, you know.
Yep.
And from that standpoint, it was great. I didn't reroute anything. We moved a couple of greens, but we just moved them a few yards to get them away from, oak trees and stuff. So from that perspective, it was really, really fun. You've got a finite area to work in. What's the best you can do here?
Another trip to make, Al.
Yeah. I know I've not played Moss Creek, so I got to go back at next time I'm back in Hilton Head and make that part of the schedule. The last thing from me, I wanted to ask you, John, and you've alluded to this a couple times. There's a great quote on your design website where you talk about the best golf courses being like obstacle courses. So building features that make it interesting, where it's not all about length. And you love it when people come up to you and say that they played the golf course and they liked to be thinking when they're out there and they want to go play it again. How can you play it better? I always think that's like at its most basic level, a good barometer for what a good golf course is that not that you leave and you're like, all right, checked that box. Like, don't have to go back there again. You want to go and see how you can improve and go back and do something different. Are there a few courses that you can think of, maybe as a player or as an architect, coming up in your career that you can point to that feel like ultimate obstacle course type of golf courses that where strategy is paramount and you learned a lot from maybe seeing those?
Yeah, I have some projects that I think are coming up. I'm actually, it looks like I did some work in Wilmington, North Carolina at a municipal, the old Ross course. And the director of golf, who is still there, when I did some work on it, we had no money. So we just tried to build back. It was funny. They had the old greens that were sand greens. They just grassed over them. And if you remember, a lot of those greens back there, whether it be Pine Needles or whether it be Pinehurst #2, they were originally sand greens because they're all sand. And but Ross finished the greens on those. Well, he didn't finish the greens at Wilmington at the municipal. So I am told we're going to start a process where the golf course is doing so well, they're going to take and reinvest some of the money in it and redo some things. And it's really exciting. The director of golf is passionate. I mean, that's one project that I'm looking forward to. I'm working in the Palm Springs area at Ironwood Country Club. We're refinishing the lesser, shouldn't say that, lesser course, the North course, but the South course there is really a test. And I'm told we're going to tackle that next. New bunkers and things. I've rebuilt greens there and stuff. And so it's just it's just every site is different. That's all I could tell you. Each site is different. Working in Utah is different, really different. And, and when people will, be a little grumpy or taking the golf course away from them for a little while, but as they begin to see what's coming, they get so excited. I love seeing that look in their eyes. I always tell people, I said, I'm not going to be very popular in the beginning. I said, I'm not worried about pleasing everybody because, guys will tell me, well, you need to do this. And I'll just, kind of nod and say, yeah, we'll take that into consideration, realizing they have absolutely no clue what they're talking about, but I love it when when a member comes up to me. I had one do this on a Ross course I'm working on in Toronto, Rosedale. And he came up to me and he said, I just want you to know I voted against this. I said, but I was so wrong. I love it. I was so wrong. I'm so glad they listened to you and let you do what you do. And, that to me is when I want to be popular at the end when people finally realize, hey, this was worth it. This was really cool. And as you know, Joe, there's a lot of renovation work in the world today. And I think it's good that we're doing things to public golf, resort golf. I try to stay current on all those different things. I work for cities, a couple of different cities. I love private clubs. I mean, some of these clubs are, hundreds of thousands of dollars to join. And resorts have a different appeal that they must keep as well. So that each different project is its own challenge. You don't just go in there and rubber stamp something like you did someplace else. That's why I like Windsong so much, is because you couldn't tell the same guy did both golf courses there. And I've done some other 36-hole projects, and I think that is really, when you really achieve it, you maximize the land that you actually have. It's not, you get to force something in there. It's rare that I would move a bunch of dirt to try to force a golf hole into a particular landscape. I don't come with preconceived notion. I don't even know what I'm going to do when I walk onto property sometimes. I'll just look at it and I'll start studying topography, walking it. And then after a while, there's a whole bunch of things that click and you realize, hey, we do this and this and this could work. And that's when you start refining it. That's how you get to the point where you're building a Windsong or a gallery down in Tucson or a Pumpkin Ridge or something. You maximize those things. I think, Joe, from my perspective, over the many years I've had the chance to play golf in different areas, that's where I have benefited greatly. Being able to have, played in 5 U.S. Opens and stuff. And that's, for Jack Nicklaus, that's not a lot. But for me, I got a really cool thing. Every year I try to go one place at least that I haven't been, that I can study golf myself. Whether it be to go see Garden City Golf Club or Shinnecock or Maidstone or something like that, wherever you might be, and see the best golf courses. Because nobody has all the perfect ideas. That's something that comes through training and learning. And, I hope to do this as long as I'm alive, quite frankly, because I really enjoy it a lot.
Well, John, as you alluded to earlier, if you're still learning, you're still living.
Yes.
And that is a good thing. I know you've got a lot of exciting projects. We just discussed a few of them for 2026, but I hope you enjoy a little bit of dwelling in the past, because you deserve it for next year's major championship venues, getting to relive a little bit of 1977 when it was the summer of John Fote. Now, I will field these arguments from people that will tell me that it was the summer of Star Wars. Okay, yeah, I'll give you that too. But John Fote and Star Wars, I think, can have a happy coexistence, because you went on a real run, and congratulations for that. And again, great talking shop with you on projects past and present.
Thanks a lot, guys. As you can tell, as one of my friends said, it's not hard getting John to talk about golf. It's hard to get him to shut up about it. And I think that's probably the truth. I could talk for hours about golf design. It's one of those things that I still love everything about it. I love visiting properties that are new and golf courses that where you're going to fix them and make them better. To me, it's the greatest job in the world. It's not as much fun as people think because you are out there slogging around in the mud and it's not as glamorous as people think. And spending the time in my office drawing things out and trying to figure out whether that works or not and balancing everything. But it is a cool process. I'll tell you, when you get it right, there's nothing like it. It feels so good.
Well, thanks for your time and your expertise. I would love to catch up with you again at some point. And meanwhile, I've got to go up to Wilmington Muni. That's only an hour from where I'm at, and I've heard a lot of good things. So I'm glad you mentioned that one as part of your list there.
Yep. Thank you so much. This has been fun, guys. And like I said, I love talking shop.
Yep. Appreciate it, John.
Okay. Have a great one, guys.